Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 172 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and I'm joined from all the way across the ocean this week by Richard. How's it going today, Richard?
Hey, Seth, what's going on?
Good. So I think we're recording in a weird time. Is it in the middle of the night where you are over in Europe?
No, it's just close to midnight, so
Okay.
This is like the sane hour for recording content.
The perfect podcast hour, midnight in Europe. So anyway, we have a ton of stuff to talk about this week. Last week we were complaining about no big standard tournaments, so we finally just had our first standard GP in GP Birmingham. And then we also have some product announcements, Commander Anthologies 2, we got a big update to the Brawl format, and we want to talk a little bit about GPs from a more meta perspective, and about the cost of GPs, which is a conversation that's been going on in the community recently. So let's jump right into it, starting with the fun stuff. So we finally got a big standard tournament. What is your takeaway, Richard, from this event? Did you get to keep up on any of it, or look over the deck list or anything?
Yeah, take a look at the deck list. I hope you like red-black aggro, Seth, because that's what's going on. Just, I don't know what the percentage here is, like 50% maybe is red-black aggro, and normally you see this when a new format comes around, okay, everyone, week one, they play aggro because, you know, it's the easiest thing to do. When you don't know what's going on, you be proactive, and you kill people really fast. Except we've been playing Standard for a while now on Magic Online. This isn't week one. It looks like people have determined that red-black aggro is the thing to be doing. And you don't see too many control strategies. You know, there's random control strategies in here. You know, some Constrictor lists trying to make it through. But at the end of the day, aggro is everywhere. Aggro, mid-rangey aggro, I might add. Chandra Torture Defiance is present. Karn is present. You have, you know, the beautiful Heart of Kiran still terrorizing Standard. Goblin Chainroller from Dominaria is in the list. So, I don't know what to make of this. Is this what Standard will look like going forward, Seth? It seems like the consensus is red-black aggro is the deck to beat here. Like, so many people are playing it. Like, a ridiculous share of people are playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. We've been in a weird spot where the format is maybe a little bit underdeveloped because of the fact that we just haven't had big paper tournaments until this point, so it's mostly been Magic Online. Although, it's worth saying, red-black aggro is one of the big decks on Magic Online, and it is kind of the mono-red deck. It's a little bit vehicle-y. You have Karns and Chandras, so you can play the Heart of Kirans and maybe an Ether Sphere Harvester. But saying red-black aggro, it's slightly deceptive, because I think the black is literally some number of unlicensed disintegrations, and maybe like Duress in the sideboard, or a Doomfall in the sideboard or something. But it's pretty much mono-red aggro with some vehicles. So I think this is the best deck in Standard. I don't think that's a big leap to say that, because in all honesty, mono red has been one of the best decks, if not the best deck in Standard, all the way back till last summer. It's even been targeted with bannings with Ramanop Ruins and so forth. So the deck is definitely legitimate. Is it as good as it looked this weekend, where by my count it was 15, I believe, of the top 32 slots and 6 of the top 8 slots? I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't think the metagame is literally 50% red-black aggro, and hopefully now that the deck is going to have a huge target on its head, maybe people will be able to find a way to at least compete with it. But I think the deck is pretty legit, and it probably is the best deck in Standard. And really, it goes back to, everything goes back to Kaladesh. Kaladesh is just still dominating the format. Bombette Courier, Unlicensed Disintegration, Heart of Kiran, Scrap Heap Scrounger, Chandra. The set is just, that set was so busted, and it's still busted, but we're getting close to rotation. So I don't know. Like, do you have hope for this, Richard? Or do you think for the is this going to be red summer or red-black summer? As we just, this is the deck for the next, 4 months up to rotation.
So I don't think this will be the only deck, but I think this deck will be around. I think it's actually closer to Mardu Vehicles than it is to, say, Hazoret Red. These lists don't even play Hazoret. But you're right in that it's basically mono red with some black for unless it's disintegration, I guess you could ribbon someone if you get settled the wreckage or something. But it's like a mid-rangey vehicle red deck, and the cards that are playing, the cards in the deck are legit cards we've seen for quite a while. Bomat Courier, Walking Ballista, Chandras. All these cards have been around, and then the new kids, the quote unquote new kids on the block, Rekindling Phoenix, Goblin Chain Roller. These are all good cards. So I don't know that you can just put a card in your deck and it will defeat black red aggro / vehicles. It's gonna be one of those things where if you're prepared, you can handle it, but a lot of people will still play it. Kind of like what Mardu Vehicles did. You can prepare for it, but it's still a pretty decent deck.
So in second place, it was Red Black Aggro that took down the tournament. In second place, we actually had Blue White Control. Did you happen to see this list, Richard? It's kind of funny. I saw it. I didn't get to watch much of the tournament because it's Mother's Day and I had to do Mother's Day stuff, but I got to see some of it. And the one match I watched with this deck, the pilot Leo Lanian, something like that. I'm sorry, I'm sure I butchered that name. But there's not really a win condition. The win condition of the deck, there is one Gideon, but the win condition of the deck is basically controlling the game and then using Teferi, Hero of Dominaria's -3 to keep putting Teferi back in your deck so your opponent mills out before you do.
How did he get second place? How did he finish his matches?
Yeah, the one
This is worse than like Elixir of Immortality finisher. This is worse than Nephalia Drownyard. This is like heartbreaking to sit there and watch him beat you like this.
The one match I did see, he had Teferi Emblem, he exiled all of his opponent's permanents, and just ran out of time putting the Teferi back in his deck, and his opponent's like, alright, I'll take the draw. I know I can't win, but there's no reason for me to scoop. Especially after you just made me play through this, exiled all my stuff, countered all my stuff. I'm not gonna concede to you, even though there's no way I can actually win this game, but I thought that was a unique take. Like, we usually see Torrential Gear Hulks or something like that. In the defense of the deck, it does have History of Menalia in the sideboard, another Gideon in the sideboard, so you can bring in more finishers if you feel like you need to, but it was pretty interesting to see. It reminded me almost of like Drownyard Controller or something, where you are winning in the super, super late game, super, super slowly, and probably relying a lot of times on your opponent scooping it up, because it's going to take you a long time to win by putting Teferi back in your deck.
I just want to see Teferi get surgicaled. What is the standard surgical, or a Sorcerer's Spyglass or something? You're like, oh no.
Otherwise, looking over the event, like, apart from a whole bunch of red-black aggro, a little bit of mono-red aggro, the Hazoret builds of the deck, does anything jump out at you, Richard? I'm not seeing anything where I'm like, wow, that's so spicy. There's like a mono green Stompy list. I guess that's kind of cool. White black vehicles was kind of one of the big decks the last couple weekends at the SCG team events for the standard portion of it. But not anything that just jumps out as super spicy and unique and new that I'm seeing yet.
Yeah, it reminds me of the arena metagame. Basically, red-based aggro, some control decks fighting the good fight, and then some random other archetypes trying to show up in the list. They're converging, Seth. They're converging, the two metagames.
So, we're recording this on the 13th, so that would mean about 3 weeks from now is the next Pro Tour Dominaria. What is your feeling about that event? Looking at these GP results, the first big results that we got, looking ahead to the Pro Tour, is this one of the, we know it's going to be Teamer Energy, it's going to suck, or do you think there's a chance that the metagame at the Pro Tour is going to look a lot different than what this tournament looks like?
I think it'll look different. So WotC will make it look different. Even if red-black aggro is 50% of the metagame, they'll show different decks on the first day. And that was kind of the story with Team Energy. Or was it Mardu Vehicles? Which Pro Tour was it where they basically showed no coverage of it the entire first day, and then when the day 2 numbers showed up, they're like, oh yeah, 50% of the metagame is this deck. I think it could be like that, and I don't know that that's bad. There's always going to be a best deck. I don't know that you'll ever have the perfect rock, paper, scissors, but the question is, can you still innovate? Like, can people make a bigger red-black aggro list or like a smaller red-black aggro list or something like that. I think there's a lot of time between now and the Pro Tour for stuff to shake up. But the question is, will we keep seeing Karn, Chandra, Teferi? I think that is my big question. Like, are those the linchpins of the new standard? Having these mythic planeswalkers kind of beat every deck, or will you actually see a deck where you don't actually need these cards? Karn is a bit problematic because he's colorless and goes in every single deck. So I wonder if the decks don't change, will the build around me cards change for standard as we progress through the metagame?
So I think obviously you look at these tournament results and it looks a little bit scary. You're like, oh, that is a lot of red-black aggro. But my experience and feelings about standard are still really positive at this point. So even though there's so much of one deck and it's an aggro deck and all that stuff, I still feel like Dominaria Standard is super sweet and there's tons of room to innovate. So I'm not to the point where I'm ready to freak out about it. That said, I do think that Karn and Teferi are pretty much the linchpins of standard. Teferi might be the better of the two cards. The question is going to be, can blue-white control or Esper control compete with these aggro decks? I don't know if that's a sure thing. Obviously, some people can. We had a second place finish. A couple more trickled into the top 32. But I think that Karn, for sure, just because it goes in so many decks, is going to be a defining card of standard, probably for as long as it's in standard. I realized today, I think that Karn, Karn Versa, is actually more powerful than Karn Liberated. That's my hot take for the day. What do you think, Richard? Is new Karn actually better than modern staple old Karn?
I mean, if I could just show and tell something in a play, I would choose big Karn, but I think you're right. The small Karn is played in more decks, it's easier to cast, and apparently very strong when you have a lot of vehicles. Not only is he a card advantage engine, but he actually just makes dudes that are like heftily sized because you have so many vehicles sitting around. I was disappointed in Karn initially, and that was a mistake. Apparently the new card is way more playable and way better than I gave it credit for when we were doing spoiler season.
So the other thing I think to keep an eye on is, I think Heart of Kirin is definitely the breakout card of this tournament, or it's been around forever, but it is back. Mardu Vehicles kind of died down, and Heart of Kirin is everywhere. So if you're playing Standard, definitely keep that in mind. I know with Seal Away coming out, a lot of decks were heading towards that as their primary early game removal spell. Heart of Kirin, part of the reason maybe why it's so good right now is because not only does it work well with Karn and all that stuff, but it dodges Seal Away because of Vigilance, so it never ends up being tapped. So it might be time, if you're brewing in Standard, to start thinking about Fatal Pushes, Braids, things like that again, and really being ready to fight the Heart of Kirin battle, because that seems like a really big battle to be fighting. Heart of Kirin, while Karn is probably more powerful, Teferi is more powerful, Heart of Kirin is the easiest way to just lose on like turn 3 or turn 4, where your opponent plays it on turn 2, you don't have an answer, you get beat down for a few turns, and essentially just lose the game immediately. So be prepared to pass the Heart of Kirin test if you're building standard decks, or at least have a plan, like play Stompy or something with some artifact destruction or a really fast clock of your own.
I got a good prediction for you. We're gonna go full circle, Seth. We're gonna start getting Grixis vehicles because we'll splash blue for the counter spells to, fight back against the control decks. Just like Mardu vehicles became 4-color vehicles. I've seen this all unfold before. I can see the future.
we're repeating the cycle from like a year ago. You
just replace Gideon with Karn, and you don't need white anymore, so you might as well just streamline it and put in World Chainers. Yeah, we've seen this all before.
It definitely could happen. We might just be repeating the cycle.
Then they'll emergency ban Heart of Kiran and then print us another 2-mana vehicle for some reason. That's just as good.
Oh man. Well, I think Wizards has learned their lesson. The last couple of sets worth of vehicles have not been anywhere near Heart of Kirin, let alone Smuggler's Copter. Remember, Heart of Kirin was like the worst Smuggler's Copter. Could you imagine if Copter was still running around, just how insane these decks would be? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, unfortunately they did learn their lesson because the Weatherlight is questionable in playability.
I think that's about the right power level, honestly. Like, I almost feel like vehicles, very similar to equipment. Like, Wizards went too far with the first set, just like back in Mirrodin, where we had skull clamps and Loxodon Warhammers at Uncommon and just cranial plating, just ridiculous equipments. And then Wizards, after, I guess, they printed Umezawa's Jitte in Kamigawa, the next block, but then they really peeled back the power level for a long time until all of a sudden we had New Phyrexia and the return of Mirrodin. We had Batter Skulls and the swords, and then we're still living with that. Wizards, I don't think, has printed a single good equipment since the return of Mirrodin block. So I feel like we're kind of at that stage with vehicles, so I expect that for the next at least few years, Wizards is probably going to just be a little extra conservative whenever they print a vehicle to make sure, because the Kaladesh ones were just so more pushed and so much better than I think they expected them to be.
They should have made Umezawa's helicopter. But that's what should have been in Dominaria.
Oh, man. So, Richard, are you still excited for the standard format? Last standard question. How are you feeling about it? I told you I'm feeling still pretty positive despite these results. How are you feeling about Dominaria Standard right now?
I gotta be honest with you, Seth. I have no idea, because I play Arena Standard. I don't know how this doesn't affect me. Until they put Kaladesh block onto Arena, I don't know, Seth. I don't know.
I guess the rumor has it that it's going to be coming pretty soon. I think that Kaladesh is supposed to be coming before the core set at least, which would put it like a month, 6 weeks, something like that. I don't think that's officially confirmed, but that's the rumors that people are piecing together. So hopefully
yes, then I can join everyone in worrying about red-black aggro.
Yeah. So let's transform and move on from standard in specific, from kind of a micro perspective in the decks and cards, to a little bit more meta perspective. So we had a big GP. GPs are getting more expensive. What do you think about GP pricing?
Yeah, I was signing up for Grand Prix Vegas, and then I pulled up my wallet, and I'm like, do I really want to do this? It's Grand Prix are like $80 now. You show up, and most likely, if you're like me, you're just gonna like 1-3 drop. Like, very few people have the expectation of going to day 2. That would be, I guess, half the people or whatever. And then to top 8 to make money, it's just so hard, right? Or, to get into the money, you get money before top 8. But to make anything respectable is so hard. And we're really there just to play for fun. So do I want to drop $80 to play for fun? Or I can just play Magic Online or Arena, or go to F&M for $5. And that's a hard decision. I remember before, you paid $40 for standard Grand Prix. You got a playmat, you got a promo, you got a good weekend of fun in. But now at $80, it's getting a little bit ridiculous. And I personally don't know if it's worth it to play in Grand Prix Vegas. I'll be there doing something, but I don't know if I'll be actually playing in the main event. And there was a big Reddit post this week about the same thing. A lot of people are feeling the same way. The prices just keep going up. And, you already have to buy a standard deck. You already have to buy a legacy deck or a modern deck or whatever, your commander decks. You have all these Magic-related expenses. And then now you got to pay for a Grand Prix on top of a hotel, on top of a flight. It's just getting really expensive, and it's starting to keep people away. I mean, if the Grand Prix was cheaper, I'd play in it, but given its price, I have to think about it, and I don't know where my decision will end up.
Yeah, it's definitely a massive chunk of money, and they've kind of cut back on what you get for that money. I don't think it used to be that a playmat was just kind of a given. When you sign up for the GP, you get the playmat. Now you don't necessarily get the GP or the GP playmat if you sign up for the lowest price. I think you have to pay more to get a playmat or register early or some additional thing to get the playmat. So that's definitely a big chunk of money. I can kind of see both sides of it. I think if you're a pro player and you're spending $400 on a flight, some amount of money on a hotel room, the actual entry fee into the tournament is probably, if it's $40 or $80, I don't think that changes the EV calculation significantly if you're putting out all that money for travel and everything. But it is, for someone like you or me who's planning on going to GP Vegas, and you have the option between paying $80 to play a random GP or just like play random Magic at the GP or play side events that are cheaper, whatever you want to do, it is definitely something that's worth considering, especially since people a lot of people aren't going to make it. We see the people that do well on camera for watching the Twitch stream, but you don't see all the people that pay $80, lose their first 3 rounds, and just say, all right, I'm done with this anyway. That's not a great, return on your investment, or even a great amount of entertainment and time and fun that you're getting for that $80 if you're one of the people that's going 0-3 drop or 2-4 drop or something like that and out in day 1. So I don't know. Do you think one of the things that Reddit Fed brought up is they kind of, at least some people, kind of pointed the finger at Channel Fireball and said, oh, this is because they have a monopoly, they can charge whatever they want. What do you think of that argument? Do you buy the argument that this is Channel Fireball kind of taking advantage of their position as an exclusive provider of Grand Prix, or was this just the way GPs were heading anyway, even before that happened?
I don't think the monopoly aspect of it affects it, because realistically, for it to not be a monopoly, you would need 2 different people to host the Grand Prix in your city. Like, for example, if Channel Fireball only did West Coast and Star City Games only did East Coast, it doesn't matter if SCG charges half the price. Like, they're never going to host it in your city if you're on the West Coast. So I don't really buy that argument. I just don't know. Like, pros will keep paying because, like you said, it doesn't matter. And as long as people keep paying, they'll keep increasing the price. Right? Remember, at first, they increased it slightly, people kept paying, they increased it some more, people kept paying, they increased it some more, you get the largest Grand Prix ever. Like, what incentive do they have not to increase the prices if we keep showing up? So, in that sense, it's just quote-unquote good business for them. But, I don't think it's monopoly. I think it's just people keep coming to these, whether it's company A, B, or C. If you show up, they'll just keep charging that much. And Star City Games, I guess, is the alternative. I don't know how much their events cost, but it doesn't even matter to me because they don't come to my city. So it's I don't know. It's just a tough spot.
Yeah, I think that Star City events have also increased in price. I don't know if they're as much as the GPs, but they have also been going up in price. So do you think this is... They've kind of tried to turn GPs into mini conventions almost a lot of the times, with artists and personalities and all this non-tournament stuff. It's not like you just go there and there's however many hundred of people sitting in rows playing Magic. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Do you think that's part of the cost? Like, is that subsidizing this convention atmosphere? And if they're going to make GPs into a convention, should we change the pricing model and the cost model where instead of the people who actually play in the tournament paying $80, maybe those people pay $40, but the people like you and me who are going to GP Vegas that might not actually play in the tournament and can just go there and do everything else for free, maybe we should have to pay $5, $10, some smaller amount of money just to get in the door and meet the artists and do all the convention-y stuff that goes along with the GP.
Yeah, that's pretty much how every other convention works. Like, you don't show up to PAX expecting to pay nothing and being subsidized by the Smash players playing their tournaments. So if I can go to a Grand Prix and basically use their space and hang out and not pay any money, that's not really sound. So yeah, I think $5 is not a lot of money. I would pay $5 for access to a Grand Prix, to get my card signed by artists, to see cosplayers, to hang out with my friends and have a good time. That seems perfectly reasonable. So if a large percentage of players are coming and not actually playing in the Grand Prix, charging $5 or something, I think would keep the prices down, probably even generate more revenue for them. And that allows them in turn to expand the convention, hire more cosplayers or whatever, hire more entertainment, and, just make it a bigger thing. So I think that's key, because Magic is a game for casual people for the most part, right? Grand Prix, the tournament itself is for like the actual spikiest of spikiest people, and there's a disconnect there. So if you just charge the casual people and make it more appealing to them, you'd get a more, I guess, representative Magic event, because most of us are casual. Most of us don't even play FNM, stuff like that. So these people would actually come, show up, have a good time, and they would contribute to, the costs of running a Grand Prix.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea as well. I think maybe we're just like in this weird middle ground with GPs where it used to be they were more tournament focused and now they've kind of went towards the convention thing, but they're still keeping to the tournament pricing and that's kind of the focal point. Maybe we're getting to the point where GPs are a celebration of Magic and a Magic convention that just also happens to have a big tournament as, a small part of that, really, and that's not the main draw. Sure, you stream it on Twitch, sure you want people to play in it if they want to, but make it a convention, charge everyone, not an absurd price. Don't come across like charging everyone $80 to get a GP. Like, that's not what we're saying.
Good idea, Seth. $50 for everyone to enter the Grand Prix sold.
Yes, don't, I'm not trying to say that, but yeah, I think it's fair that there's a small amount paid just to gain entry into the GP, if that means bringing down the cost of the GP or being able to reinvest that money into making the GP, like you said, a better experience for the non-players. Well, hopefully something changes. I think it would be good to see the price structure change a little bit moving forward because I think GPs are really important to Magic, and I think making them important to a wider range of Magic players beyond just the spikes that want the pro points or hoping to, spike a finish and get on the pro tour, making it appealing to more people, I think would go a long way. And I feel like we've come that direction and went more towards that convention thing, but I think we can still go further that direction. And if the cost of that is charging people a small entry fee, it's probably worth it in the long run for the GPs and for the people running GPs and for the game in general. So anyway, let's move on from the world of tournaments and the world of pricing and talk about some changes. So we had a massive Brawl update. So if you're not familiar with Brawl, I know most people are, some people still aren't. It's kind of the standard Commander format. So we had some huge changes to the format this week, Richard. So number one, Brawl was initially just the standard ban list. It was exactly whatever is legal in standard, legal in Brawl. Whatever is not legal in standard isn't legal in Brawl. Step one of these changes was Wizards decided to break that off, give Brawl its own ban list. Going along with that new ban list was a bunch of bannings and unbannings. First off, Brawl, Chief of Compliance, is banned. Sorcerer's Spyglass, also banned. And then we had every banned card in Standard, except for Smuggler's Copter. So Ramunap Ruins, Felidar Guardian, Rogue Refiner, Attuned with Ether, Aetherworks Marvel, all those cards, Rampaging Frozen as well, all those cards unbanned in Brawl. Also a couple of smaller changes. You can play with a colorless commander now because there weren't enough colorless lands to build a colorless like Karn or Hope of Gurper Brawl deck. But if you're building a colorless deck, you can now choose a basic land type of your choice, one basic land type, and use any number of those basics to fill out your mana base. And then there's some weird tournament changes. I don't really care about tournament and Brawl, but tournament play, 1v1 play, dropping down from 30 life to 20 life. So, Richard, a lot to kind of digest there. What are your take on the Brawl changes?
I dislike them.
Dislike?
I dislike because they are still emphasizing 1v1 Brawl, because they haven't separated it, and they explicitly mentioned that they do not want to separate them. How can you balance a format using the same ban list for 1v1 and multiplayer? Clearly, the Brawl ban, the Chief of Compliance ban, is targeted to 1v1. In multiplayer, he's not that good because you simply cannot counterspell 3 people's worth of cards with your commander. But he's being hit, and it just covers both formats now. And the fact that they continue to mix these two, every time we talk about Brawl, we have to complain about Brawl Chief of Compliance, but that doesn't affect multiplayer. But people who aren't in the know, that aren't super, involved in this format, they don't know the difference, and they hear this and they hear the endless complaints about the format. They hear how it's a 2-commander format, all this stuff, and then they get turned off multiplayer Brawl, which I think is the greatest idea ever. 1v1 Brawl, I think, is the dumbest idea ever, and they should have just nixed it because it will get solved. It is basically standard. You can't say you want a format where you can play the cards that aren't powerful enough for standard, and then put it in a 1v1 context where you will basically just play the standard cards because they're the only ones strong enough in a 1v1 setting. So I just don't know. It's just very confusing what they're trying to do with the format, and I don't think it's achieving their goals. I think they should have just kept it strictly multiplayer, never made Moto tournaments for it, and, you know, not encourage stores to put up prize support for it, because that just encourages competitive behavior and, you know, tune deck lists, and that's not the spirit of a casual format.
There's a couple of things that stood out to me in the announcement. One of them was, it sounded like Brawl took off a lot more than Wizards thought. It sounded like they kind of thought, oh, this will be this kind of fun fringe format. Maybe some people will play it, because their article announcing these changes definitely made it sound like they were very surprised with how quickly and how much it took off, just with conversations and pro players and tournaments and deck lists, and it just blew up way faster than they thought it would. So I kind of feel like maybe they hadn't thought through all of these things going into the creation of the format, because, I mean, Brawl is a great example of that. If anyone knows 1v1 Commander on Magic Online, we went through this same exact thing. Like, Brawl was absolutely dominant to the point that they had to ban it, so it shouldn't have been that hard to kind of figure that out ahead of time if they're going to run tournaments. So I thought that was interesting to know that Brawl was really catching on, and that they were definitely considering making products for it. They mentioned that as well in the article, that there's been a lot of requests for pre-con decks and promos, and they're definitely hearing that, and they couldn't promise when it was happening, but it sounded like that was stuff that was going to happen. I don't know. I think it's good that the ban list is separated from standard. I think that was probably should have just been that way from the beginning, that it should have its own ban list. On the other hand, it was weird that they said, we want to keep these formats together because it's too confusing, and then at the end of the announcement, we're like, oh, but by the way, we're going to make it so you start at 20 life in 1v1, but you still start at 30 life in multiplayer. So it kind of that was a little bit contradictory to me. Like, if you want to keep it the same because it's too confusing or complicated, and you want the format to be the same for everyone, it's not really the same because of the life total thing. So I think if they're going to continue to try to support competitive Brawl and multiplayer Brawl, a lot of these changes were necessary. Like, competitive Brawl was basically unplayable because of Brawl Chief compliance. It's a little sad to see casual Brawl suffering, I guess, so to speak, by Brawl getting banned. I actually had a couple of people, when I posted a YouTube video on it, say, oh, I had actually just ordered the Brawl deck to play multiplayer in my local play group and bought all the cards for it, and now it's banned, and that really is frustrating to me. So, I don't know. It's kind of a mess. I think the changes are fine given the situation that we were in, or necessary, but I'm still not really sure the direction that Wizards is trying to head. Do you think it's too late, Richard, for them to just pull support for the tournament focus of Brawl, or has that ship already sailed?
I think they should de-emphasize it. I think they should remove the Brawl 1v1 leagues, or at least rebrand it. What if you called it, like, duels or something? I don't know, right? But, like, just call it something else. Because it plays very differently if you're playing 1v1 versus in a group setting. Like, can you imagine playing standard with 4 other people using actual standard decks? Some decks will just not be... You can't play, like, a burn deck in a multiplayer format. Like, it just doesn't work. You don't have enough cards. It's kind of the same, right? They're taking multiplayer decks and trying to shoehorn them into 1v1, or vice versa. It just doesn't work. You have to actually build different decks. Even if the card pool and the ban list is the same, you still need to build different decks. For example, every standard deck is a modern deck. Would you show up to a modern event using a standard deck? Like, no, you would get annihilated. Like, it doesn't work, right? So you wouldn't take a multiplayer Brawl deck into a 1v1 setting, and vice versa. Like, it's just not built correctly. It's not accounting for the right metagame. So I don't know why they're so insistent on trying to keep the same set. And they did this with 1v1 Commander initially. Remember that 1v1 Commander on Moto shared the same ban list with multiplayer Commander. And it only took them like a month or two to backtrack out of that. So it's surprising that they launched Brawl with the same mentality. Even after going through the first revision, they're still keeping the ban list the same. So I suspect that in a month or two, they'll split the ban lists. And I also expect in a month or two, no one will care about 1v1 Brawl, just like no one cares about 1v1 Commander. And they should be spending all their time focusing on marketing multiplayer Brawl, which is what I suspect where all the hype came from. That's why everyone jumped onto this. They're like, oh yes, Commander, but with standard cards. They weren't thinking, oh, I want to play Commander Singleton, or not Commander, Standard Singleton. They weren't thinking that, right? They were really thinking multiplayer Commander fun, but with standard card pool.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much dead on. I think that is where the hype came from, and I can't imagine that the Brawl Leagues are going to be that popular on Magic Online, because 1v1 Commander is almost unplayed on Magic Online at this point. It's very close to a dead format. I constantly see the few people that do play it posting pictures where they literally are waiting like 40 minutes sometimes to get a match in a 1v1 Commander League. So I could see Wizards' impulse to be like, okay, we have this new format. We might as well try to like monetize it on Magic Online and get some money out of it. But I can't even imagine that they're going to make that much money off of it, especially if it does go the way of 1v1 Commander, because how much money are you really making off of 90 people playing a 1v1 Commander League? It's just not a significant amount of money, especially if making that 90 players worth of league money on Magic Online is pushing away 1,000 players who are turned off to the idea of the entire format because they see 30 of the top 32 decks in the tournament being Brawl Chief of Compliance or something. So I feel like the idea was great, but the execution could have went better, and I think Wizards needs to come to grips with the fact that Commander is super popular, and the more things they do that are Commander-like and based around interaction, multiplayer, those type of formats, the more success they're going to have. Like, obviously, the tournament scene is important and it needs to continue to be supported, but I think with something like Brawl, it's so easy to just make it standard Commander, focus on the awesome multiplayer part of it, and probably have a huge smashing success, but instead we've had this, like, kind of muddled release and kind of a lot more complaining than we would have had if it was just, oh, this is a fun casual format.
Yeah, if they had never mentioned 1v1 Brawl and launched on Moto, I think we'd be having the time of our lives playing multiplayer Brawl. But because of that, the commentary's kind of in the wrong spot, according to Wizards, right? We just see all these bans, we saw all this churn, we see, oh, Wizards R&D doesn't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But if they just had multiplayer Brawl, released it on Moto as multiplayer only, no tournaments, I think it would have been a resounding success.
All right, one more topic before Fishmail, and we got a product announcement this week. Well, it's a reprint product, but it is a product announcement. Commander Anthologies Volume 2, coming out the beginning of June, so we're just under a month away from launch, and we got 4 reprinted Commander decks. So Richard, tell us about Commander Anthologies Part 2.
All right, we have 4 decks built from scratch, headed by Duretti. We have Devour for Power, headed by the Mimeoplasm. We have Wade into Battle, headed by Kaleem. And we have Breed Lethality, headed by Atraxa. All 4 decks for 165 MSRP. They have the new legendary frames, and they're first-time foils for a bunch of cards here. Releases June 8th.
So I think this is a very solid product and a very solid choice. I think that this is definitely something that is worth picking up if you want these cards and you're a Commander player and you don't have these cards already. While the MSRP is high, 165, that's a lot of money to put out. Every one of those decks as singles is over $100, and there's some very high-end cards, like Atraxa's $30, Urza's Incubators, like almost $20. There's a ton of like $2 to $5 cards, Fiery Confluence, Legacy staples, like $26. So you're definitely getting your money worth. I actually went back a little bit and looked at the past Commander Anthologies, and while card prices will come down a little bit, the fact that right now it's almost $500 worth of cards you're getting for your purchase, I think that even in the long run, you're still going to be getting a pretty decent deal even after the card prices normalize and come down. So I think it was a pretty good selection and a pretty solid product.
Yeah, I like all the decks except maybe Kaleem. I know it seems like a weird Boros deck to be here. Atraxa, I really like. We know that this is a ridiculous set Commander 2017. Atraxa is crazy expensive because she's so good. Duretti, solid. Mimeoplasm, solid. Kaleem, okay, but I guess it has Fiery Confluence in it. That itself is like a $26 card. Urza's Incubator, $18 card. Thematically a bit awkward, but I like the choices. Like you said, you get about $450 worth of value right now. It's going to go down as it releases, but it's well worth the money. I like the fact that it pulls from different generations of sets. So maybe if you didn't collect all the sets, here's a chance to pick up and catch up on some of these cards. So overall, I like the product. They're available on eBay right now. The one concern I had was, will these just not be in stock and you'll pay way more than MSRP? The answer so far is you can get them. So if you wait around, especially for an eBay coupon, one of those 15% off or one of those, say $15, you can even knock the price off lower. I think right now it's $145 on eBay. So you can go even lower than that. So it's a really good deal. And we've done the pre-constructed deck battles on Commander Clash before. And for the most part, they're all really well built and fun. So this is something I'm actually looking at getting. Maybe something we can play during Grand Prix Vegas if we can get it in time. So I think it's actually a pretty good product, and I'm very happy with the deck choices they made.
Yeah, it's definitely very solid decks, and I think it's a great product too if you are kind of new-ish to Commander, or you have a play group that you're trying to get started on Commander. This is, I might buy one too, actually. I've been teaching a couple of people Magic, and it's the kind of product that you can buy this and just leave the pre-con decks together almost like a board game and just set it on your shelf and pull it out and have fun with it. Teach people Commander, teach people a thing, or you can, that's what I would like to do with it, but you also have a lot of just format staples, Soul Rings and Worm Coil Engines and Medallions and good lands, so you can also go the other direction and just like add these cards into your Commander collection as a way to get a lot of format staples and build other decks with as well. So I think it's pretty solid. I'm very very happy with it, excited for it, and might also pick one up just because it seems like a good thing to just have sitting around for when the moment strikes and you want to play some pre-con battles. So let's move on to our Fishmail. So Richard, take it away.
All right, if you have questions, send them to the hashtag MTGFishmail on Twitter, and we'll get to your questions on air. First question, Sebastian Tans. I'm building my first EDH deck ever. I've decided to build Oloro. He seems to be one of the most hated commanders ever, and I wonder why. Do you have any bad Oloro games that stick out, Richard or Seth? Seth, I believe Oloro has been your commander on Commander Clash before.
It has. It's actually the perfect commander for me since I never cast my commander, so I still get value even when I don't cast it. So I think it's not... Oloro is very strong. I think the main thing that makes it so hated is it's a little unfair when you have an effect that just always does its thing even if you never cast it. It might not sound like much, but gaining 2 life from the command zone, it is a little bit annoying.
Yeah, there's no way to remove that effect aside from removing the player, which is why we killed the Oloro player. It's not like a normal effect where like, okay, I'll just Oblivion Ring it or something and make it go away. Like Oloro's just very obnoxious, so people just get rid of him. And he's actually very strong. He's not just obnoxious. That's a very strong ability that will take a toll on the game as it goes on. So that's why Oloro goes first. It's kind of like Perforos. Even if you've done nothing, everyone knows how strong it's going to be, and they're prepared. They'll kill you.
Yeah, and I will say it's fun to build around, though. Turning your life gain into card draw, it is pretty sweet. So I would definitely still recommend building around it, but be prepared for your playgroup to probably be trying to kill you first.
James Carr 4701 for Blue-Red Prowess in Modern. How many wizards does it take to make Wizard's Lightning better than Lava Spike?
I'm gonna say I'd have to run some numbers. If they're cheap wizards, like 1 mana wizards or maybe 2 mana wizards, I think the minimum you want to be looking at is 8. If you had 8 1 mana wizards, your odds of having one in your opening hand are pretty good, so you can always just fire it off on turn 2. So I think 8 is the minimum, assuming they're 1 mana, and if you're playing more expensive wizards, the number might need to go up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know that... Would you ever replace Lava Spike, though? I could see it being Lightning Bolt's 9 to 9 plus. But replacing Lava Spike seems a bit dicey because you will have hands where you don't have wizards, and then you have this uncastable card in your hand.
Yeah, that is a good point. I don't think I actually play Lava Spike in the prowess decks that I have built. I think... so I don't know. It's kind of a weird question for that. But no, you probably wouldn't just straight up trade Lava Spike. One of the things about the prowess deck, unless you're... Oh, man, you'd have to have a lot of wizards to actually want to replace Lava Spike, I think. Because you want to just be able to cast your spells and trigger prowess at will. So if you have like a mixture of wizards and non-wizards, you're going to have some really clunky draws where you really need to trigger prowess for your non-wizards and you can't cast your wizard's lightning.
Alright, Angry Poncho 2. Black-white tokens in Modern. My only graveyard card is Lingering Souls. Should I play Rest in Peace or Nihil Spellbomb?
Spellbomb, I would go with. You can get by with Rest in Peace, but in the token deck where Lingering Souls is the main part of it, I would probably just play Spellbomb.
Yeah, you just need to learn how to time it correctly. Because with Spellbomb, you actually need to crack it at the correct time, unlike Rest in Peace where you just set it and forget it. Jairus909, with all the tribal hype this year, I'm kind of surprised they didn't reprint Cavern of Souls. Would it be bad for the format? Is there hope for M19?
Oh man, it kills control. We know that from last time. So if maybe, I think it depends on how strong Wizards thinks control is going to be. If there was ever a set they would put it in, M19 is probably the one because it will be in Standard for the least amount of time. It'll be just over a year in Standard. So if Wizards pegged Karn and Teferi to be making control just the best deck in Standard, maybe they justify it as a way to let other decks fight control, but I'm leaning towards it being too strong.
Yeah, I think Cavern of Souls is going to be used to sell a Masters product as opposed to being reprinted in Standard. I think Mutavault would be something that they would start putting in if they want to support Tribal as opposed to Cavern of Souls.
Oh man, Mutavault broke Standard last time. Do you not remember how brutal that was?
Yeah, but what if they made like fixed Mutavault? It's like a 1/1.
Okay, I could see fixed Mutavault. I could see that.
Alright, Ran and Dark Rider. Is there any reason why Sleep isn't played in Commander more often? Seems like every time I cast it, someone else dies.
Does Sleep target one person or all opponents? I'm actually looking it up.
I thought it was one, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, target player control. So, I mean, it definitely is a good way to kill someone. If you just tap down all their stuff and have everyone attack them, it seems like it can be pretty effective. So, I guess I don't know. It's also kind of mean. It's a good way to make an enemy. If you're the one that's sleeping someone and they don't die, you're probably going to be their main target. So, what do you think, Richard? Why doesn't this really show up?
Is it win more? If you're losing, this does absolutely nothing for you. It's like a political tool or something. Like, you need other players to help you kill the player that you're about to tap out, or you need to have a dominant position, because if you're losing, this does absolutely nothing. So maybe that's why. But I do agree we should probably play it more. This is a pretty sweet card. Clinton Reed 789. I built the non-budget of your Mardu Vampire list in Modern, and I was wondering if Sorin, Solemn Visitor, had any place in the list. What would you cut for him?
Oh dear, you're putting me on the spot. I actually have to try to pull up the list to tell you what I would cut. Yes, I think that you can play a copy or two of Sorin in the list. Hang on. As far as actually making cuts, that's going to be the more challenging part, because the list, it's fairly tight as it is. If you wanted to cut something, maybe
Vampire Nocturnus?
Vampire Nocturnus is so good. That's the best card in the entire deck. I don't think I can justify cutting Nocturnus. You might be able to get by with just like trimming like a Bloodghast and like Vampire Cutthroat or something. I don't think you can play more than one or maybe two copies of Sorin. So I would just look at trimming probably one copy of Bloodghast or one of the one drops like a Vampire Cutthroat.
Alright. That one, Okazaki. Some say spells like Dress and Negate should always be in Standard to control the format. Do you think there are any creatures that should always be in Standard to help define the format?
As far as actually seeing tournament play, I don't know if there's any creature I can think of that just always needs to be in Standard. I think you could argue things like a 2-mana dork, but it doesn't have to be a specific one. I think there's kind of like tropes or certain archetypes of creatures that every standard format probably needs to function, but I don't think it needs to actually be a specific version of that creature.
What about like a Phyrexian Revoker? Or is that too good to always be in standard?
I think that having a Pithing Needle effect should probably always be in standard, but I don't think it necessarily has to be a creature version. I think like having Sorcerous Spyglass is fine, or actual Pithing Needle. I think you can have non-creature variants of it as well.
All right. Key D. Chillian, how do you feel about Dungeons & Dragons now that you've played it yourself?
I'm just not good at acting. I think it's a very fun game, and I think that it's interesting. I just could not really get comfortable with the role-playing aspect of it. So maybe I just need to play more and get used to it. So I think I like the game, but it's just so different than any game I've played before. I still don't feel 100% comfortable with the acting and role-playing, even after playing our adventure.
Yeah, I've learned that I don't actually roleplay. Like, even when I play video games that are RPGs, I just play them disregarding my character. I'm just like a ball of stats and abilities. So it's kind of different playing Dungeons & Dragons where you're supposed to act out your character. So that's something I need to figure out. But I think it's fun. I think it's interesting, and I think it's pretty cool to see and experience kind of the basis of a lot of modern RPGs. Like, a lot of video games use kind of the Dungeons & Dragons engine in the background, like, as the basis of their game. So I think it's actually pretty cool to see how that actually works and where it all came from. Phaedos Maximus, is there a reason Carnage Tyrant isn't played in standard? Not even in mono green?
So in mono green, it's just a little slow and expensive. I actually think it depends on the metagame. If the control decks, like the blue-white control deck, ends up being very good, I think we'll be seeing more and more Carnage Tyrants. It's starting to creep up as like a pretty reasonable sideboard card to fight against control, because that's where it really shines. The problem is, if everyone's playing red-black aggro, it's just... by the time you're casting it, even though it's very powerful, you're probably already dead. And if you're not dead, if you spend 6 mana to cast it, you're going to get killed by a Heart of Kirin or some other flying threat, a Rekindling Phoenix, a Glorybringer or something.
Yeah, control isn't strong enough right now. There was a time where Carnage Tyrant was played in standard, though. But now is not the time unless Teferi and Karn can do something about it. Heartwood MTG, Seth, have you softened your opinion on animations in Arena since you've been playing it more?
Well, this podcast actually is probably going up the day after I just wrote an Arena article. So yes, if you read the article, it went up last night on the website. I talked about the things I like and dislike and how far the game has come, but one of my biggest positives is I actually like the animations. I have to admit, I was very, very skeptical going in, but not only are they okay, I actually like them and have not had any problems with them. So if they keep the animations exactly like they are now and don't go any more over the top, I actually think they're pretty sweet. What sold me was the sagas. The scrolls unfurling for the sagas. When I saw that, I was like, all right, this is actually pretty sweet.
Who are you? My favorite animation in Arena is the Entomb. Or the Embalm, where the card comes up and the mummy linens or whatever, like, wrap the card and unwrap it. I think that's the coolest.
I will say, I wish that it was like Hearthstone, where you could keep making actions while the animation was going. I find myself, if you've ever played Hearthstone, you can just kind of like keep dragging your cards and doing things while the animations are playing, and even though the card doesn't like play while the animation is going, it like remembers it and does it. So it would be awesome if they could make that happen, so why the animation is going, you can be making your land drop or whatever. I would love to see that as just a small improvement, but even if that never happens, I've done a complete 180 on the animations.
Yeah, it kind of does that. If your turn is ending, the other turn starts while the animation is going off. So for example, if you tap out to cast something that has an animation, your turn will end and the other player will start playing as the animation goes. But if you still can do stuff, it locks you until it finishes playing for you to do additional actions. So we're halfway there.
Have you played Lyra on Arena yet?
No, I've seen people play it though.
So Lyra, since we're talking Arena, there's apparently some bug or something where if you attack with a first strike creature and some non-first striking creatures, it does first strike damage, and then you have to hit end of turn to go to your regular combat damage, and it's actually, that needs to be fixed, because every time I do it, I am afraid that I'm actually going to pass my turn and not be able to play stuff second main phase.
It's all first strike creatures.
It's so
I
bad.
see it all the time playing mono red.
Yeah, so that's a very small thing. Just like change the text box to like damage or whatever you need to change it to. But the first time I did it, I really freaked out because I thought I was going to skip my turn and lose because of it. So,
all right, Echo Base MTG, and also Eric Judd 11. They both have a similar question. Is Dominaria the end of affordable standard? Do you think WotC takes cost impact into consideration when designing cards? Teferi and Karn are nearly $40 and $60 respectively.
I think we're in just like a perfect storm situation, really, where I talked to a lot of people on stream last week, and a reasonable number of people said their local game stores are actually sold out, or were at that point sold out of Dominaria. So the natural, like, cards get expensive, people open more boxes to try to get the expensive cards, upping supply, prices go down. That can't necessarily take place as easily as it normally would. So I think we're just in a weird time where Wizards underprinted the first print run of Dominaria, or maybe it's just so many people love Dominaria and old players came back to the game and it was way more popular than they thought. So I think we're just seeing the remnants of that. Although I will say with Karn, colorless 4-mana Planeswalker, that card's probably always going to be very expensive.
Yeah, I think the mistake was having a mythic Planeswalker that every deck can play. That was good because every deck will play him, and then there just aren't enough copies of Karn to go around, so the price will start going up. Sebastian Tan, Seth and Richard, what are your favorite Eldrazi that aren't any of the Titans?
Hand of Emrakul.
What does that even do?
I like that one. I like that one for Rise of the Eldrazi drafts. It is the worst Eldrazi. It's a 7-mana 7 or some mana 7/7 with Annihilator 1, but you can sack 4 Eldrazi spawn tokens to cast it as an alternate cost. So I used to try to draft make a bunch of tokens, sack them, and play the quick Hand of Emrakul.
You're not going to name like Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher. I think actually Void Winnower is pretty cool. You can't even. Desolation Twin has always had a place in my heart, but I've never found an actual use for it. The one, I guess it's a 10 mana 20/20 because you get 2 10/10 bodies. So if you can fling it or something, I don't know. But that card always sticks in my mind as something I need to do something with, but I never got around to it.
Also, It That Betrays is just super cool. The one where you can tutor for any number of Eldrazi from your sideboards for like 20 mana or something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question. Tidal Wave 87. Seth, on the rare occasions you play Paper Magic, do you narrate what your opponent does, like in your videos?
No. I try not to, although sometimes it's hard not to just slip into narration mode.
12, Loku, is Karn already on his way to a spot on the standard ban list by being part of every single deck? Or is he safe as being face of the set?
I mean, we saw Emrakul get banned, and Emrakul was probably more the face of the set than Karn is for Dominaria, but I think it's way, way, way too early to talk about bannings. Although, if I had to pick one card from Dominaria that's going to be the Emrakul or the Scarab God that we're all going to be complaining about in 6 months, it's probably Karn.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, to answer the question, it depends if there's a scapegoat. Like, Saheeli Rai should have gone, but Felidar Guardian took the hit, so...
What do you ban to make Karn bad, though? Like, what is the card?
All cards over CMC4 are now banned, sorry.
Yeah, all artifacts, so you can't pump the constructs.
Quilted Train, do you think Belgium's recent ban of loot boxes in video games could have a ripple effect on the digital TCG model if it picks up enough steam and is adopted by other countries? So, I guess we should fill in. So, Belgium passed the law, or they are going to pass the law, I'm not sure which, stating that loot boxes are illegal. So things like in Overwatch or whatever, where you open a box and there's random contents. And then for some reason, they grandfathered in Pokemon TCG. They said, okay. That's not abusive. I'm not sure why, but so given that Magic is currently safe, if you can make an argument for Pokemon TCG being safe, then I think Magic should be safe. However, if you inspect it, it doesn't make any sense. It's basically the same loot box principle. So I suspect that they'll eventually backtrack on that and include Pokemon TCG in this, which would include Magic.
I think in the US, they've actually had, back in the 90s, Pokemon, I don't know if it's ever been Magic in specific, but the model of trading card games has actually went through the court system, and it's always been found okay. So I'm not super worried about paper Magic. I think digital is a little scarier, especially for Arena. I think on Magic Online, you can kind of skirt some of the gambling issues because everything's out there, the odds are stated and out there, and maybe it'll be that way with Arena eventually, but not having real numbers and knowing the chances of what you're getting, I think maybe makes it more loot boxy on Arena than it is even on Magic Online or in paper Magic.
But I don't know. I mean, the whole point of this game is to prey on our gambling tendencies to crack packs, right? We all talk about how we love cracking packs, right? So,
and at least in paper Magic, you don't have to do that. Like, you can just buy singles and you can do that on Magic Online as well. But Arena, that's your only method really of acquiring cards. So I think Arena to me is the Magic product that is closest to that or most at risk of falling into something like that.
Yeah, I think it's based on popularity and how easy it is. It's because in the 90s, not enough people played Magic or Pokemon TCG, so it didn't matter. But now with the age of digital, you can have it on your phone. You can sit there and crack thousands or tens of thousands of dollars worth of packs quite easily. Whereas if you're actually trying to do those Magic boxes, you gotta go to the store. They probably only have 10 boxes or whatever. Like, you can't just keep going infinitely. It's much harder. So I think part of it is the ease of access and, how easy it is for you or your child to, continually rip through packs in hopes of finding something.
Also a question, the games that this targeted, do you know if they have real money economies? I need to keep up more on this. Like, can you...
Overwatch, you can't really somehow translate that back into currency.
So if you open something super awesome, it's not like you can sell it for $1,000 in real money or something.
So some games you can. I think Counter-Strike, you can do something similar to that. But a lot of the games people are talking about, like, it's just like Arena. You just cannot do anything with. Craig Naughton 5. What is the longest Demon Lord Belzenok chain you've heard of in Limited? My opponent reanimated my Demon Lord to exile 6 lands and drew 7 cards. He decked himself.
That sounds like either some really bad luck or a really bad Limited deck.
Yeah, I don't know how
you can do that.
I can see it in like a set with Delve or something. But in a normal set, like, how are you going to cast all of your cards?
Yeah, that's a Tomer special. 6-drop tribal.
All right, last question. Jay the Human, how would you feel about unbanning Rampaging Ferocidon? With white being the primary life gain color and now having the best removal sweepers in the format, shouldn't red get its dino back?
Oh, I would have been more accepting of this question before seeing 16 or 15 red-black aggro decks this weekend in the tournament. I think red is just too good. I don't think it's that Ferocidon is too good. I think it's that red is too good, or I don't know if it's too good right now, but it was too good, and that was just a way Wizards could take a little shot at red without banning a key mythic like Hazoret or something really expensive.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty safe, though. I think it was there to let token strategies flourish, but they haven't, so it doesn't matter. I guess it's like a mild annoyance to like your second sun decks or whatever. You got to remove this before you cast your spells, but I don't think it actually would impact the metagame too much because the decks it holds back don't even exist.
I guess the other argument is they just printed Chain Whirler, which maybe that's just would be the 3-drop of choice anyway. Maybe Chain Whirler is just better than Ferocidon.
All right, that's all our fish mail for this week. Thank you to everyone who sent them in. If you have questions, send them to the hashtag at the hashtag MTGFishmail at MTGGoldfish on Twitter.
So I think that brings us to the end of episode 172 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. Richard, thanks like usual for hanging out. Always fun to talk some Magic.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Seth.
And thanks to everyone for listening. So we will be back next week to talk some more Magic. Until then, have a great week, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.